So about a year ago, I decided to make the change from a solid state amp to a vacuum tube amplifier. Now, being familiar with guitar amps, and my guitar amp is a tube amp, I of course like the unique warm sound that it has. Now, my old stereo was this 5.1 surround system from Sony. So just like everybody else in the year 2000, I quick rushed out and got a surround system because DVDs were all the craze. Well, in the past 5 years, I realized I stopped using the 5.1 and started using the floor speakers exclusively, so therefore I was down to a 2-speaker system setup anyway, and I thought it might be time to take the leap to a vacuum tube setup. Since this was going to be my first vacuum tube stereo for the home, I wanted to stay under $1,000 if possible, because apparently, after doing a lot of research, the sky is the limit when it comes to hi-fi systems that use vacuum tubes. Anyway, I ended up purchasing this YAQIN MC-13S for about $700. In that last screenshot, you may have noticed that I purchased this system in December 2015. So unlike some of those unboxing videos that people have, I have had this for about a year, which means I think I've used it enough to have some really good insight about the amp itself. So let's start at the back, and here we can go over the inputs and outputs that it has. One of the main reasons I chose this was because it actually has 4 inputs, whereas a lot of the vacuum tube amps I've seen on the market only have 1. This also has a standard D plug, and you can change the voltage depending on what country you're in. Before I continue, I need to address one of the main complaints that I did see on a lot of Amazon reviews from people, and that was about setting their system up and only having 1 speaker working. If you look closely below this speaker output, you'll notice that little plastic screw looking thing down there. Well, that's actually the fuse, and I would say 9 times out of 10, that's the real reason the speaker isn't working. And that reason is because you have a blown pipe fuse. We've all become accustomed to the convenience and reliability of solid state items. But vacuum tube technology is old technology, so we have to remember that's the way it was. And the way it was involved blowing fuses from time to time. So do yourself a favor and get a little 10-pack of these on Amazon. I picked one of these up and I've probably gone through about 3 fuses in 1 year. Oh, and incidentally, yes, this is actually the case that it came in. Seriously. Fuses are pretty easy to check and replace. All this does is unscrew, and you can check the fuse right there. And you'll see there's a little metal line in between there. And if it's blown, it's just a part, and if it's not, there's a full metal line there. This one seems to be okay, as you can kind of see it there if I could hold it still. There you can see it. Now in this stereo, you can have either a 4 ohm or an 8 ohm set of speakers. Just check the back of your speakers, I'll say it. In this case, mine are 8. You also have another option. You could either unscrew this and put your speaker wire inserted directly into there, but that can be inconvenient from time to time if you do need to move your stereo to get it in and out. In my case, I chose to use the banana plugs, and they're a little more convenient, and you can install them on your own speaker wire. They're very easy. One more thing about banana plugs is if you get this kind, you'll notice I'm screwing that in there. That kind of locks them in there, so if you need to move your stereo in and out from the wall to get back to some aux plugs, they won't just pull out of the system. Finally, insert some components into the aux inputs, and this will be the last part that we do on the back of the stereo. Then we can turn it around and work on putting the tubes in. So here's the final setup. I got the speakers in, I got the components in. Now I just need to plug it in, push it back against the wall, and we work on the tubes. The tubes that fit in back here are EL34Bs or 6CA7s. These back tubes are the actual power outputs, while these front ones, the 12AX7 and the 12AU7, are the preamp tubes. So the unit does ship complete with all the tubes you'll need. Now I used these tubes here that came with it. It looks like the little Destiny brand. I've never heard of it. And they're from China, and they're just okay. They're not bad. But one of the best features about a vacuum tube system is that by simply changing your tubes out, you can get a better and different sound. And that's exactly what I did. I bought some tongue saws. Now tongue saws are Russian-made tubes, and I guess Russia and the Czech Republic are known for their premium tubes, and these tubes do not disappoint. You may remember that I didn't want to spend over $1,000 on the entire system. So the system itself was $700, and these tubes were about $300, so I'm at about $1,000 in right now. Look for either orientation grooves or the pins on the bottom of the tubes and insert them into your system carefully. Just push them in gently. You can wiggle it a little bit just to get it down there, but they should go in pretty smoothly. Remember, there are 12AX7 and 12AU7 tubes that go in this system. Both tubes have the same pin configuration, but they are definitely not the same tube. So just double check the top of the tube, there's the name on there, and just make sure you're putting it into the right slot. You probably noticed that I wasn't wearing white gloves to insert the tubes. Well, you don't really have to. Just wipe them down with a soft cloth when you're finished to remove the fingerprints. Turn the amp on and let it warm up for about 5 to 10 minutes. Tube amps need to be biased, which is a way of balancing the power output between the tubes themselves. To perform this adjustment, you'll need this little star-tipped screwdriver thing, and this actually comes with this system, and it gets inserted back into this little slot here next to each tube that you're going to bias. You'll also need your own multimeter, which has small enough prongs to be able to go into these little areas on the side, and you'll see here how small they are. Red gets inserted into the plus, and black gets inserted into the minus. The target voltage is actually printed on top of the stereo itself, which is between 0.35 and 0.4 volts. Now we're reading at 0.28 volts, so we have to adjust up to get between that range. Now it is a sensitive adjustment, so just move it slowly, and I'm going to try and shoot for between 0.37 and 0.38 as my target. I typically check the tube voltage about once a month just to make sure everything's still in check, and since this amp doesn't ever move, it's always fine. So I'm pretty comfortable being between 0.37 and 0.38. That seems like a good middle ground. So I'm going to move on to the next one here. Simply repeat this step for all 4 of the back large tubes. These are the only tubes that get bias adjustments, by the way. Those front tubes are just preamp tubes, and I'll be honest, I don't know why they don't get adjusted, but they don't. So again, just aim for the same bias point on all 4 tubes to try to get everything matching as closely as possible. Once you're finished with this, you're ready to start playing some music. One last thing, this amp does not have a phono stage. So if you want to play your vinyl records, you will need to use either a separate tube amplifier to bring it up to the phono level, or have one built into the record player like this one is here. The actual interface is very simple. You have a volume knob which goes from min to max, you have a VU meter that bounces when you're playing music, and you can select between your inputs. As you can imagine, the higher you put the volume, the more the VU meter bounces. The first time I uploaded this to YouTube, it was rejected because I had music playing here, so that's why you're seeing this version without music. I was playing Depeche Mode, by the way. Anyway, if you're looking for a home hi-fi stereo system that's a vacuum tube amp, this is a very good place to start. I hope you enjoyed the video, so please like and subscribe.